updates. Good morning, Tobago.
Good morning and welcome back. And guys, we're gonna jump right into our conversation about that new president that we have. We had that inauguration ceremony happening yesterday down there in Port of Spain. And to have that conversation with me this morning, I'm joined by Dr. Shane Mohammed. Good morning, Dr. Mohammed. How are you doing?
Good morning. How are you? I'm very well,
I'm
thank
okay,
you.
looking sharp as always. It's a pleasure to have you here on Tobago Updates.
Always a pleasure to be on Tobago Updates.
Right. And so we looked at that inaugural ceremony yesterday, and a lot of things stood out. One of them being the speech that was given by Mrs. or new president, Christine Kangaloo. And she really spoke about her initiative to kind of make that presidency more modernized to suit today's society. You know, she talked about not being too remote and being a bit more accessible compared to previous presidents that we have seen in office before. So I don't know if she's trying to do kind of like a White House presidential thing where she allows person to come in there and see what's happening and being more open to the public. Give us some insight on how you felt about that speech, especially about the initiative that she's taking to be more accessible to the public and be more visible than previous presidents that we've seen before.
Well, let me extend my congratulations to Her Excellency, and I actually I posted yesterday that it was vision from inauguration, and you know there is this conversation that keeps coming up about constitutional reform, and at the top of that list is the office of the president. But in the interim, while we wait on constitutional reform, and I will say this, constitutional reform is dependent on the will of the people. If they want change, they must be able to vote to give a new administration, just as Tobago did, to give a new administration the mandate to go about providing those constitutional changes, which includes a reform and strengthening of the presidency. With that said, I think the presidency is what the office holder makes it. And given the constitutional restraints, because we have a constitutional presidency, and it is the office of the president is governed by the rules within the constitution and the provisions within the constitution. Notwithstanding that, I think Her Excellency went on to indicate very subtly that there are going to be restrictions to her presidency given what is written in the constitution. However, that does not prevent her as the president and as the office holder to making her presidency impactful, embracing, people-centered, and it was quite refreshing, much to the disappointment that the opposition did not think it was important to go to not a political event, but a national event, which saw the inauguration of our second female president.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit more about that. Where patriotism is concerned, we hear the opposition talking about their level of patriotism all the time. And yesterday's events and their no-show kind of contradicted a lot of what they have been pushing for when they talk about that level of national pride and patriotism.
I think at the end of the day, we can use reference, and he's always a very good point of reference to make. If you want an example, when the whole idea of a new president arose, there were two names that were proposed, and on my part, and many people many members of the population suggested Mr. Pandey become the next president, and Mr. Pandey had indicated not too long after those comments that he was not interested in becoming president because he felt that the presidency was an office holder that did not have teeth. Notwithstanding his personal thoughts, he showed a level of statesmanship that Mr. Pandey has always showed, that yesterday's event traversed his personal thoughts and beliefs, and that it was important for him as a former prime minister and as a statesman to actually be at the event, because the event is not a political one. The event is actually a state event. it is about the state of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. And I went on to tell the Newsday yesterday that at the end of the day, there are many Trinbagonians that still have hope in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and that we every day we strive. We get whether we agree to disagree, whether we agree or with each other or disagree with each other, we are all striving for a better nation. And I think what President Kangaloo brought to the table yesterday was a vision that we've not heard of from a president, any preceding president. We heard a vision for the presidency and the office of the president to be a space where education, social upliftment, and cultural activism can be a center stage. And she talked about the bandstand, she talked about the ballroom of the president's house, and using it for art shows, exhibitions, discussions, book clubs. You know, it's all of, and she also focused on the development of youth. And I think all of that ties into the fact that it is what at this stage, given the fact that we are in need of constitutional reform, it is what you make of the office. It is what you, they say beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. Well, leadership is is on the shoulders of the leader, and it is in the vision and thought process of the person who is holding the office. So therefore, I think we have a lot to look forward to. Christine Kangaloo, I mean, there are people who would want to talk about what happened between her and the former central bank governor. I think it's irrelevant. Putting that aside, Christine Kangaloo has had a very pristine reputation in the public's domain and is seen as one of the most respected politicians out there when she served at that level. What I also want to tell people is that we often don't look at the person behind the office. And in one of yesterday's dailies, there was a 2-page article about her surviving breast cancer. As a result of surviving breast cancer, she was unable to have children. She spoke about the loss of her sister through an accident. She spoke about the loss of her brother. So she went deep into her personal challenges, and for me, especially the cancer aspect, having relatives that were cancer survivors, as well as to family members that succumb to the disease, I think it shows the strength and grit of the lady behind the office. And we as Trinbagonians can do our part by giving her the support that she needs. And she called on all of us to give her the support that she needs to make sure in her attempt to transform the office. And I don't think that her task, I saw other political scientists saying that it's a mama task. No, it's not. It's about getting buy-in. I think she got that buy-in yesterday, and I'm sure she's going to get the support of the nation. Where I think the grit I speak about of the lady will come into is when she has to make decisions that may not be in favor, will be in the interest of the people and not be in favor of the government. And the government has a responsibility to understand that they can't always get their way. At the end of the day, yes, they nominated President Kangaloo for the role, but now she is elevated to a level of independence and independent thought, and therefore it's not simply what we say. I look forward to the day when she can be like President Robinson and tell our government, no, I don't agree with you.
When we look into the future, do you think we can see the opposition possibly getting past this, because there's nothing that they can do at this point to change it? So, or do you predict that we're going to see them continuing to stand up and say, well, you see what we told you she was politically affiliated, and this is the reason why particular decisions are being made? Can we possibly predict some level of maturity on the part of the opposition moving forward? What do you think?
I think that's a joke. I think the opposition has proven itself to be incompetent. I think they're quickly becoming irrelevant. And, I was thinking about how best I could say this in a diplomatic way. And I think the only way I could say it is that Mrs. Prasad Bisesa has always had a problem. And that problem has always been that she always wanted to be the one woman of East Indian descent to be at a high level of authority. If you look, if you look at her history, and I can name several of them. If you look at her history as prime minister, um, remember she grew up in a man's world, politically grew up in a man's world, being having served as the only woman on the opposition bench, and then having all of these firsts attached to her name: first AG, first acting prime minister female, first AG female, first opposition leader female. And sometimes that level of hubris gets to a leader that is entrenched in the role. So that, look at the history in terms of how she treated former Minister Nan Ram Ghulam, who was an excellent Minister of Public Administration, how she emasculated former Minister Caroline C. Prasad Bechan, how she dismissed former MP Ramona Ramdale, how she dismissed former member MP and Minister Stacey Rupnarine, both of who were very young and intelligent women. So I think it's not about Mrs. Prasad Bisesa. It's not that Mr. Pandey said she was anti-president. I think she's not anti-president. She's anti-woman who looks like her and who can rise above, because
It's a very strong statement to make on
of
your
course,
behalf.
I make no apologies for saying that.
Okay, and that is your opinion, and you have a right to your opinion. But moving forward, she said a lot of things, especially concerning youth development and her ability to really get more involved. A lot of persons are saying, well, it was just a really empowering speech, and it might just be like everyone has been before. Moving forward, I think that we really need to give her a chance to do a lot of the things that she says she wants to do. How can the public really open up their minds to really appreciate, regardless of all the propaganda and all the opinions surrounding her appointment, to really give her a chance to let her do what she has been appointed to do?
Well, you see, the thing about it is, it's not. I don't believe that there was propaganda around surrounding her election, not her appointment. At the end of the day, that propaganda that you speak about was solely on the part of the opposition, and Mrs. Pasabi Sessa had no problems when and no issues and no qualms about putting forward Mr. former President Iana Robinson's name for presidency when he was the Member of Parliament for Tobago and Minister Extraordinary in 1997. My question from then to now is, what has changed? Nothing has changed. In fact, it is a benefit when someone who has been able to serve the people at the level at which both Iana Robinson and Christine Kangaloo has, they understand the plight of the people on the ground. So therefore, they don't come from a space where they are unattached and unrelatable and disconnected from the people. Well, you see, we often put persons in the office, and we put them in the office because they belong to the higher echelons of society. So we put President Maxwell Richards was able to come down from his professorship and be a people's person. And there was nobody who loved our culture more than President Maxwell Richards. The same applies to President Kamuna. But there were also but it is all different styles of leadership which she highlighted. I mean, people will complain that President Weeks was far removed from and very unrelatable and disconnected from the population, and she herself made no apologies for that, and that's unfortunate because, as I say, I think there's also, we have to take into consideration there are two cultures in Tobago, and you know how much I love Tobago and I love the Tobagonian people, because there's a level of camaraderie, there's a level of understanding. When you speak to Tobagonians and you speak to them in a language in which they understand, they are less aggressive and less vociferous, and they are more accommodating and they are more supportive. And I think that is one of the things that is unique to the Tobagonian people, and why this administration in Tobago is able to maintain its popularity, because they're able to speak to the people in a language in which they understand. And I think President Kangaloo will get that support from the Tobagonian people. In terms of Trinidad, I find Trinidadians have become a very hateful group of persons. I think they have gotten to the point where they've become so fickle-minded and I tell my students this, that they have become so superficial that they fail to see that there's a human being and a person behind the office. And because there's so much disappointment in leadership in Trinidad, at the level of government and when I talk about government, I talk about both government and opposition. There's so much disappointment that the Trinidadians have become more blasé and frustrated by the process, so that anything that comes forward as something new, they're very quick to dismiss it. And that's unfortunate, because if we want to become a progressive nation, I think our progressiveness has to come from the vision and the attitude from Tobago into Trinidad. And the Trinidadians love to come to Tobago. They see Tobago as their first place of coming, running away for vacation. And they need to sometimes just see it for the beauty that it is, and the island and Pigeon Point and all of that, but see it also for the beauty of the people and the understanding of the people, and also the maturity of the people. And maybe I've said it time and time again, that that Trinidadians can learn from our Tobagonian brothers and sisters, in that manner of understanding and and not having that level of conceitedness.
Agreed in that aspect. And so because of that, we hope to see Her Excellency Christine Kangaloo in Tobago pretty soon, as probably a part of her the inauguration. Maybe she might see it fit to come across and greet and meet some of the people here on the island of Tobago. And so we extend congratulations to her.
I think one of the things I would put forward, and I would suggest to Chief Secretary, is that one of his first order of business within the next couple of weeks should be an invitation to Her Excellency, and let her see that that across the divide, that let Tobago lead us in that regard. So I would suggest that let's not wait for the president to come to Tobago, but let's have the Chief Secretary invite Her Excellency to come to Tobago as one of her first order of business, so that she could meet, greet, and interact with the Tobagonian people. I think that would be very fitting.
Suggestion. And again, in terms of looking at Tobago as more than just a tourist attraction, excellent point there. So unfortunately, we don't have sufficient time to continue with this conversation, but we know that you are a regular here, and we're going to see you back again very soon. So again, thank you for taking the time out this morning to discuss the newly appointed president, Her Excellency Christine Kangaloo, and we give her all the congratulations, and we look forward to her being able to implement a number of those things that she spoke about. And as the public, we just want to encourage persons to give her a chance. Open up your minds, and hopefully, as you suggested, we see her here in Tobago, hopefully upon the invitation of the Chief Secretary. Because I think that it's important for a number of school children, even at the primary school level, to be able to have that interaction, to see up close and personal the president in her full glory. So again, guys, thank you so much for joining us here on Tobago Updates for another episode of Good Morning Tobago. It's always a pleasure to sit here with you and have those conversations and ask those questions that you want to ask. So guys, have a great day. And again, we thank you for joining us. Thank you for liking and sharing and participating in the discourse. And it's only because of you that we are the #1 broadcasting station here on the island of Tobago. Again, thank you and have a great day.